All right, so now I'm here with Alexander, who is also another game designer in the Indiepub contest. Alexander, tell us a little bit about your game. I was talking with you a bit earlier about this game, and it looks very confusing. So briefly, kind of try and give us a little idea what it's about.
Well, it's a very difficult game to explain. It's totally counter-conventional. It's not what you'd get out of games at all. It was that by design. And to classify it as a kind of genre, I classify this as a philosophical first-person single-player exploration puzzle art game, which sounds like it's a lot of words, but that's probably the most succinct way of explaining it. So it's like another way of saying what you actually do in the game is you're running around in a non-Euclidean labyrinth of interactive, wonderful spaces.
So it's basically just a first-person puzzle game with all the other description, of course.
To a degree, but for a bunch of the game, it's not even about puzzles. It's about exploration and the kinds of choices that you're doing.
Gotcha.
You know, there are a lot of puzzles in there, but it's mainly about exploration and finding these weird and wonderful spaces in this four-dimensional world.
And I was noticing that there are some parts of it that are linear and some parts that aren't, so you can't get to some certain areas unless you do something else, or...
Correct. So the game is still set up like a Metroidvania, but in a Metroidvania where you come across like a door that's red, it's like, oh, you can't open that yet because you don't have the missiles. A lot of the times in Hazard, you will come across things and be like, I don't know that I can do this yet, but it's because you're missing knowledge of how the world works, not specifically missing items. So you'll go off, you'll do other things in the game, they will then teach you about these actions that you could have always done, you know, so sort of walking instead of jumping or looking. So using a whole lot of basic interactions that people don't really use in first-person shooters and building a whole lot of choices and puzzles around that. And then later on, as the game progresses, you get a gun that can manipulate geometry in a whole lot of ways. And that's where you start coming across some puzzles that you just flat out can't do until you have a certain level of gun.
Wow, okay. And how long did this take you? Where did it kind of start and how did it develop, or how did it get here today?
Okay, so the ideas for this game started off back in 2006, where I was just messing around with prototypes for a geometry system. But the actual game as we see it now started back in March 2009, so last year, where I had all of these crazy prototypes for like geometry and space, and I wanted to bring them all together into a more complete commercial game. And I was working on the game last year in my spare time for about 6 months, which gave me a completed Unreal Tournament 3 mod that I entered in to make something Unreal, and entered into Sense of Wonder Night at the Tokyo Game Show. And because I then later won Make Something Unreal, I came 5th in the grand prize and also got good reception at the Tokyo Game Show, I was like, all right, well, now I need to do something with that exposure. So this year has been all about working full-time on it.
Wow. So the Indiepub picked you up, I guess, throughout. You've been to other events and they kind of saw that and brought you here?
Yep, so I met the Indiepub guys back at E3 in June, and they really loved the concept, and you know, they were like, you should enter our competition as well, and you know, as it turns out, I've ended up being a finalist in their competition as well.
Excellent. And what do you plan on doing with the game in the future after you win, or what do you want to do with it?
So there's a commercial release coming out on PC. The game should be finished in a couple of months, but I'm only one person working on it, so it's kind of like when it's done.
Yeah.
And it's also a really big, ambitious game. You know, consoles may happen in the future. I can't do that myself, so that would sort of depend on publishers and whether I wanted to go down that route or whether I just wanted to distribute on PC, etc. right now.
And is it available online or on a browser, or is that what you're intending to do it? Or?
It's a downloadable game. It'll be available through the usual channels.
Of course. Is it already released, or are you planning on?
It's still in development. There was a demo released back in May, which is on the UDK Showcase website, because I'm a showcase piece for them. If you play the demo, like if you're really dying to sort of get your hands on it now, you just need to keep in mind that the demo was a work in progress. You know, it's several months have passed since then, so I started the game with depth first and then was working on all the accessibility things. So the demo right now is still a good representation of the game, but there's still some things that are a little bit more frustrating than they should be, or less guided than they should be, etc. So by the time the commercial game is released, I'll have done way more playtesting. I've ironed out all of those issues. But for people who want to sort of understand the game a bit more and get introduced to non-Euclidean space and a bit of geometry manipulation, there is a demo available on the UDK Showcase website.
Well, excellent. Best of luck to you, Alexander. Thank you very much.
Thank
the
you.
game looks very interesting.
Thank you.
And let's check it out.